The Assassin's Creed franchise is a franchise that I've been following for as many years as I've been into gaming. My very first game that wasn't either FIFA, Minecraft, or a Lego game was Assassin's Creed 1. So I definitely have a soft spot for this franchise, and it's my favorite of all time. I played all the games back to back from Assassin's Creed 1 all the way through to Origins. And then I got to Odyssey, and yeah, I needed a break after that one. But I did eventually beat that and Valhalla. But as we all know, the past two games were not necessarily Assassin's Creed games. They definitely moved away from the franchise being about assassins or anything about a creed, which is pretty strange as it's called Assassin's Creed. So, when I heard about Assassin's Creed Mirage and how they were going to return to the roots, I was extremely excited. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love RPGs and I honestly think they can work for Assassin's Creed. It's just the fact that all the RPGs besides Origins just kinda suck. Assassin's Creed Mirage was an opportunity to return to the roots, and that is exactly what Ubisoft Bordeaux did. Even for such a small team in comparison to the big Ubisoft teams, they did an amazing job, and you can tell that this was a passion project for them. What they were able to do, especially with being stuck with the Valhalla engine, is amazing. Most of my issues with this game come down to the fact that it is used with the same engine. Just from all the interviews from the team and other things, you can just tell there was passion behind this. They wanted to make an experience that was a return to roots for older fans of the older games, and I absolutely love it. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely some issues with this game, and some of them being caused by the return to roots, but I overall really enjoyed this game. I felt like I was playing an old Assassin's Creed game, and I consider that a success. You finally play as an assassin again, and the story is driven through the Assassin-Templar conflict. This game has its flaws, but there are definitely a lot of positives to take away from this review. And I hope it's not the last time we see a game that is a return to roots. So, let's get into this review. We start off the game by hearing this monologue from William Miles, which serves no purpose, so we'll ignore it. Once we actually get into the game, we see Basim for the first time. Our first look at Basim is him in this sort of nightmare hallucination state with this really creepy figure that they refer to as a Jinni coming at him. As he gets close to him, he wakes up. But this won't be the last time we see that figure. When Basim wakes up, he is greeted by his friend Nehal. And from here is when we get our first look of the world, which is absolutely gorgeous. Ubisoft absolutely nailed the set piece here, and we're not even in Baghdad yet. Just from walking out into Ambar for the first time, you get a different feeling than you have in the past 3 entries of Assassin's Creed games. And don't get me wrong, I love Origins, and it's one of my favorites in the series. But it didn't have that OG Assassin's Creed feeling, and obviously Odyssey and Valhalla didn't have that feeling either. This game just made me want a remaster or a remake of the first game so much more. But that's not the point of this video. Soon after walking into the city, the game shows us a new parkour system. The parkour here is decent and is definitely better than the past few games. They built the world so perfectly for traversal and parkour as you can go across the whole city purely on rooftops and staying off the ground. That has been unheard of in an Assassin's Creed game for a while now. Even later on in the game, when you are introduced to more outskirts parts of the map, you can't just climb up any mountain or any structure you come across. There actually has to be some planning on the player's part on how they climb certain structures. It's not some super insane in-depth planning, but at least you can't just mind-numbingly hold A and climb an entire mountain without looking. Basim isn't the quickest with parkour though, but I don't mind that as I feel like it works for this game. My main issue with the parkour system is just the lack of response to player input. So many times Basim does the complete opposite than what the player wants to do. Just look at some of these clips. They're actually embarrassing. At first, I didn't notice this issue, but the more I played the game, the more this issue was prevalent. There are so many times where Basim would do the complete opposite to what you wanted to do. I still think the parkour is a major improvement from the last few entries, but it could definitely be better. It just falls into that issue that is caused by the Valhalla engine. The parkour is held back because of this. After the parkour part, we are given a tutorial on pickpocketing, stealing, and using your eagle vision. Mirage does not play any games here, as in the first 15 minutes of the game, you have done more stealthy things than basically the past 3 games combined. Okay, that's a slight exaggeration, but you get my point. Mirage from the get-go shows that stealth is a focal point and necessary in this game. So after going through that little tutorial, we are told to go see Darish as he has a contract for us. Darish explains to us that the Hidden Ones wants us to collect the ledger at the harbor, but Basim thinks it's too easy of a job and wants something more difficult to impress the Creed. This will come up again soon, which will lead to some very bad events for Basim. Ubisoft uses a harbor as your introduction to stealth, actually being relevant and useful in an Assassin's Creed game again. This section was decent and it was just fun having to use stealth because you need to, and not just because you want to. One weird thing that I noticed early on is that Basim just be talking to himself in the middle of those stealth missions, and it's so dumb to me. Like later in the opening when we're at the palace, he speaks to himself as the guards are walking by, and it's just funny how they don't hear him.
Keep quiet now. No groaning.
Another great feature that seems really small but makes such an impact is the fact that you have to flee and lose sight of the guards in this game. It's no longer like, oh no, I got detected, I'll just kill them all now. It's an, oh no, I got detected, I have to get out of the sight of the guards. Another thing that I noticed here was the little cloth boxes that you had in AC1 where you would hide in. They're in this game as well, which was really cool to see. And one last feature that is prevalent throughout this game is the fact that you can't take on multiple guards at once. The melee combat has been extremely scaled back, so stealth is really encouraged throughout this game, which is a great feature. Once you steal the ledger, you have to go back and return to Dervish. Once you get there, you see a hidden one there named Roshan, who will be a very important character in this game. Basim basically makes a fool out of himself by begging Roshan to let him become a hidden one, but obviously she says no. Then him and Nehal come up with a big plan to sneak into the palace themselves to steal the chest that the hidden ones are after, so Basim can prove his worth. This mission up to stealing the chest really isn't anything special. It's really easy and you would have to try and get detected. You have two options about going at this mission. You can find your own way in or follow Nehal, and I chose the latter. After getting through the palace, we find the chest, but before we can take it, we watch a discussion happen with the Halif and the Order, which are the Templars at the time. After they all leave, we make a move for the chest and open it up. Inside, we find some Isu disc that plays some type of video that we can't really tell what it is at the time. Then the Halif comes back and attacks Basim and is about to kill him as Nehal saves him by killing the Halif. One quick issue here that I noticed, and one that kind of stays throughout the game, is the lack of quality in the voice acting and also the character models and cutscenes. Things just don't feel too real and they give off very fake vibes. Like the fight between Basim and the Halif is just kind of funny to me, as the voice acting, especially with the Halif, is just rough and mediocre at best. But I will say that I do think Basim is fairly well voice acted, and I enjoy him in most scenes. It's just very annoying as there's parts throughout this game where it's supposed to be a more serious moment or important part, and it usually just falls short as the lack of any emotion in the voices or faces is evident and most moments in this game fall short. Like I already said though, I really only enjoy Basim and Roshan in this game in terms of voice acting. The game would have been so much better if the cutscenes were just better in every way. Most cutscenes just feel so fake and not genuine conversations, and feel scripted, which ruins the immersion. So back in the story, after Nehal kills the Halif, you have to make a run for it and escape. I really like this escape section because it's just so intense and the use of parkour to escape was just so much fun. They laid the map out perfectly for this escape, and to run away you basically use all forms of traversal in the escape, which is amazing. This is the climax of the prologue and it's a really good one. Once you get away and get back to the hideout, you fall asleep, and even though we don't see anything, we know Basim has another one of those dreams like he did at the beginning of the game. He wakes up to Roshan at his bedside telling him they have to go. Before you escape, you go look for Nehal and Darish, and when you get to where you think they are, you find every child dead on poles. Every child you talk to at the beginning are dead. It was a shock factor moment and I was not expecting it in the slightest. I couldn't be too sad or emotional as I barely even knew the kids who died, but the shock value was most definitely there. While you're there, Nehal appears, but you yell at her, saying you never want to see her again. Basim believes it is her fault since she killed the Halif. After you run away from her, you escape with Roshan by falling into the water. The next scene is Basim 2 months later in Alamut, which is where the Hidden One's base lies. I really like the look of Alamut and the whole layout of it. It's really cool, and you're able to traverse everywhere, which is fun to do. And it's also crazy to be with a bunch of assassins again. While we're in Alamut, we learn the combat for this game. There really isn't anything interesting with the combat. It's very basic as all it contains is your light and heavy attack, your parry, and the dodge. The combat throughout the game is fine, but it's not something I use too much. I try my best to basically stealth the entire game because that's what I enjoy doing more and it's the better option. The combat is definitely like the older games, but older in like the first few games in the whole series, which really isn't a good thing. I don't know why they couldn't make the combat like Unity's or Assassin's Creed 3's. I feel like they downgraded heavily in terms of the combat comparing it to those games. There's some cool combos here and there, but it definitely isn't that great of a combat system. It isn't that free flowing and just not that enjoyable to do. I don't mind it too much though, as it does encourage the use of stealth, and the enjoyment comes from the stealth in this game. After learning the combat, there seems to be a small time jump, but nothing too big, where Basim continues to train to be initiated as a hidden one. And this is where we are introduced to the skill tree. The skill tree is basic at best, but it serves its purpose and I don't really have any issues with it. Here we reach the point where Basim gets initiated, and it's a pretty cool scene. It's always cool seeing people get initiated. So Basim goes through the process of cutting off his ring finger and putting on the hidden blade for the first time. Soon after that, we are sent to Baghdad following a very poor cutscene involving Nur coming back extremely injured. Once we arrive, you instantly see how beautiful Baghdad is. It's absolutely gorgeous. They know the setting in every way here, and I love it. Just the way it's structured to the people in it. The city is dense with people and feels alive. The whole city is amazing for parkour, with so many seamless transitions from building to building with how they lay out certain parkour pieces. It has everything you want from a city in Assassin's Creed. The designing of the buildings along with the bigger set piece structures are made brilliantly. I enjoyed every second of being in Baghdad. It is such a highlight of this game and it's very well done. Baghdad is amazing and it's something that I can always count on Assassin's Creed doing well. There have been very few games of the series where I dislike the setting. Baghdad consists of 4 different districts. These districts are Habia, Abbasiyah, Karkh, and the Round City. Each district is unique in their own way, which I really enjoy. Again, very similar to how Assassin's Creed 1 had its different districts and each having their own feel. Now, for the shops, we have the traders, blacksmiths, tailors, stables, and a cartographer. The names are fairly self-explanatory for what they do, as the trader just is basic tools and collectibles. Blacksmiths can upgrade your weapon and change the appearance. Tailors can upgrade armor. Stables can change the appearance of your mount and enkidu. And the cartographer reveals where treasure is. I really only used the trader, and that was only once or twice to buy some tools back. I only upgraded my armor and weapon once and didn't touch any of the other shops. That doesn't mean they're bad, they all have their purpose. I just really didn't use them. Baghdad is just built perfectly for parkouring across the roofs, but it's also really cool walking through the city. We are also introduced to some of the side content here and collectibles, but we'll go over all those things at a later part in this video. Once we're in Baghdad, we have to go and find the bureau for the district. I know that sounds really similar to another game. The heaviest inspiration that I see in Mirage is the very first game. They even have a feature where you can change the color tone of the game to match Assassin's Creed 1, which is a really cool touch. Finding the bureau and going into it brought back some great memories. Once we get into the bureau, we learn about what we have to do to find Ali. Here we are introduced to the investigation tab where we will have all our information and clues to slowly figure out where Ali is. This system definitely gives me vibes of the Order of the Ancients from Odyssey and Valhalla, but definitely more catered to an assassin. It also gives off vibes of AC1 where you have to do all these tinier objectives before doing the assassinations. I enjoy the system and I like the whole idea of slowly revealing the main target. Our first course of action to find Ali is to go to a man named Beshi and help him. We go through a stealth section, freeing his rebels, which is a really fun one. The stealth in this game is just done well, and I enjoy doing it. Once we unlock all the tools for stealth, we'll do a deeper dive into it. But for now, all we have is the throwing knives, which I really enjoy using. After freeing all the rebels, we go back and look for the rebel merchant who has been helping Nur, and lo and behold, it was Darish. Again, the reunion was underwhelming. At this point, I'm already being a dead horse, but the voice acting and face and character models really diminish in the cutscene. It makes it feel a lot less genuine or have it hold any real emotion. But it was still nice seeing them reunite, and he gives you some more info, and he also opens up some side content for you. So, after the reunion, we discover Ali's whereabouts and head back to the bureau to discuss things. We come up with a plan, and our next course of action is to free Ali. Here, we are also introduced to 2 new things. One is tool enhancements, which I absolutely love. Having the ability to upgrade your tools to get different stat bonuses in them is a really cool feature, and these bonuses are actually useful. The other feature was contracts, which is something we will also discuss when we go over the side content. But one thing I will say is I really enjoy those as well. Back in the story, we arrive at the Damascus Gate prison to liberate Ali. I love this mission so much. This truly felt like an old Assassin's Creed mission. I love how they give you different options of how to infiltrate, with having the rebel as one and the merchant as the other. I picked the merchant here, but I did find it funny how I just walked in with my assassin robes on. Also, to get help from these people, you have to use a token. The tokens are a constant theme throughout the game, and I feel like it works. It gives an incentive to explore the world and collect them so you can use them on these missions. I also like how you don't need to use them. The game leaves it very open for the player to go about these missions as they want. The entire mission of freeing Ali was fantastic. I felt like a real assassin, and that's something this game did consistently throughout. You feel like an assassin and you play like one. Having to use different types of stealth, watching the guards' movements and planning when to move or kill them, it was great, and this is just the first of many missions like this. We eventually escape with Ali, but our notoriety is very high and we have to lower it. This is the first time within the story it is introduced, but you'll most definitely have to deal with it prior to this mission. The notoriety system is always a great thing to have in these games, and they do it well here. You have 3 different levels to the notoriety. The first level, you may be recognized by civilians if you stand around for too long near them, and they'll start calling out for guards. The second level means that guards will recognize you more, and you'll be more easily detected by them. And lastly, the third level guards will attack you on sight. To lower your notoriety, you either have to destroy posters, like you did back in the Ezio days, or go to Munadi and pay it off using one of the tokens. I never really used the Munadi. I used it like once or twice, and I don't really see the point in using it too often, as the posters are just like an easier way to do it. After dealing with your notoriety, you have to regroup with Ali and the others. After regrouping with them, you set out to do your very first assassination in the game by killing Al-Hul. I enjoy every moment of this mission. You start off by talking to Roshan beforehand. I like Roshan, and her dialogue is often good, and the conversation with her is a great build-up for this mission. It creates this importance and value around the assassination. This is Basim's first one, and it feels like that with Roshan talking to him through it all on the ride, and it builds it up well. The actual assassination itself is also well done in my opinion. You have 2 options to lure Al-Hul out to assassinate him. One is to use a caravan leader and help him, or help the workers. I side the latter and help the workers no longer be bound by their deed and set them free. I also love the location for this mission, and having to use the crowd to navigate past the guards is great and takes genuine stealth to get through. Moving from one group of people to another to blend in was fun to do, and something that hasn't been done in an Assassin's Creed game in who knows how long. Again, this game makes you feel like an assassin, and I love it. After letting the workers free, Al-Hul comes out and you assassinate him. Here, we get our first wide room confession with Basim and Al-Hul. There's nothing too interesting to say about it until the ending, where Al-Hul speaks on Basim being more than just a hidden one, and following that, Basim sees another Jinni. It's heavy foreshadowing for the end of the game, but we'll get to that eventually. I like the Jinni and their suspense around it, but if you played Valhalla, you can conclude that it's something to do with Basim being the reincarnation of Loki, which takes away some of the suspense. I like the Jinni, and there is suspense around it, but if you play Valhalla, you can conclude that it's something to do with Basim being the reincarnation of Loki, which takes away some of the suspense. Once the assassination is finished, we are introduced to Assassin's Focus, a very, very controversial feature in this game. It's one that I lean more into not liking at all. Even though I have seen very cool gameplay with it, it's something that I stayed away from using too much. I used it like once or twice to see what it's like, and I didn't like it. It's an interesting idea in theory, but I just don't feel like it fits the game, and it's not needed. They try to explain it as the enemies not being able to keep up with how fast Basim is, but it just doesn't feel right to me, and it's a pretty lazy excuse. I wish they at least try to show Basim maybe running a little bit in the broken up frames instead of just him just teleporting. It's definitely something I stayed away from using because I didn't like the feature too much, and I feel like it broke the immersion of the game. One last part of this mission that I found funny was when Roshan and Basim are leaving the place, they just casually walk out. Like, where are the guards that were still there after I killed Al-Hul? They just cease to exist and we just waltz on out of there. Before you leave though, you see Nehal, and obviously you have to go and find her. You ask permission from Roshan to do so, and she lets you. You travel back to Ambar to find Nehal and find her at her old place. You reunite with one another in what seems like a very easy reunion. You would expect with what Basim said to her that she would still have anger towards him, but no, she doesn't. At first, I thought this was poorly done, but after learning about the end of the game, it makes complete sense. But we'll talk about that when we get there. We learned that Nehal has been studying the symbol that we saw at the Winter Palace, and we agreed to help her find more mysterious shards to figure out what all this stuff means. We agreed to help her find more mysterious shards to help figure out what all this means. One issue with this whole reunion for me is that it's too short. I feel the same way about the Darish reunion. You haven't seen these people for a long time, and all you do is spend 2 minutes talking to them before leaving. It's very rushed in that aspect. I wish with both Darish and Nehal, you did a little quest with them involving the quest that they gave us after. We would have spent more time with these characters, and it would have given us a little introduction into what we're looking for with these quests. After reuniting, we head back to Roshan, and this is where the game really opens up in terms of overall exploration and how you want to continue progressing through the game. The rest of the bureaus now open up to you, which are in Al-Abyssiya, Karch, and Sharkia. You also gain access to the more tools from Abu Jafar. I really like the tools in this game, as it adds great depth to the stealth in this game and gives different ways of approaching it. You have the throwing knives, smoke bombs, sleep darts, noisemakers, and traps. The main two I used were the knives and smoke bombs, but I definitely used all the tools a lot. I also love the upgrading system with these, like I've already said before, as these upgrades actually improve the said tool. So now that the game has opened up and we can go at the game the way we want, we'll talk about the side content this game has to offer. For exploration, you have gear chests, lost books, Darish artifacts, mysterious shards, enigmas, and Tales of Baghdad. The side content is okay. There's nothing really special, and I wish we got more on that aspect. All these besides the Tales of Baghdad are just collectibles with no fun gameplay to get them. The only two pieces of side content that doesn't involve collectibles are contracts and the Tales of Baghdad, but even the tales fall really short to me. I really only enjoyed one of them, and that was the one with Hytham when he was a kid. It was a cool connection to Valhalla, and I enjoyed the interaction between them. With the artifacts and shards, you pickpocket both of those, and it's annoying that they couldn't come up with a more interesting way of collecting one of them, instead of having the same way for both. The only enjoyable side content for me was the contracts. The contracts were fun to do, especially with the little challenges they give you. Like don't get detected or kill a target with fire or something environmental. Another cool one was stealing a bow without being detected. They had fun concepts that made enjoyable gameplay sequences, and I really had fun with them. The last piece of side content was if you pre-ordered the game and got the 40 Thieves quest, and I'll talk about that quickly. You get the quest in one of the bureaus, and you have to go looking for Ali Baba's daughter. The whole plot with her finding her father dead and eventually avenging him was good. I enjoyed this quest. It had a lot more to it than other side content in this game, and I wish the Tales of Baghdad were more like this. So, to conclude the side content, I'll just say that the side content was fine, but was not a strong point at all, and it's probably more or less one of my issues with this game. You look at so many older Assassin's Creeds and see great side content. Sadly, Assassin's Creed Mirage took too much inspiration from Assassin's Creed 1 in terms of side content. Back in the story, I decided to go to the Abyssinia Bureau first, so that's where we went. The questline here starts off with Tabid wanting us to investigate with what's happened to Ahmed since he was not arrived at the Bureau. This Bureau, along with every other Bureau we will do, gives us 2 investigations to pursue to take out 2 smaller targets before we take out the main one. This Bureau's 2 investigations are to investigate the fire at the House of the Wisdom and to find Ahmed. I do the investigation for the fire first, and we go through it and find the target, who is named Zahra. We learn that she started the fire, so we go and assassinate her. The system of investigations is okay to me. It's not great and it's not bad. To me, it just doesn't feel enough like an actual investigation. Also, the plot for each of these investigations aren't really that interesting to me. Another thing is that you as a player don't do any actual investigating or solving. You just go through the missions and learn more as you go through them. It's not a bad thing that it's done that way, and a lot of the Assassin's Creed games do it like that, so I can't say it's just this game. You just have to make the plot actually interesting for me not to have an issue with it, but Mirage didn't do that. I would just really enjoy seeing a system maybe similar to Unity's murder mysteries, but for the main story. You actually collect the clues and find the target yourself, and you potentially being wrong and having to face the consequences of being wrong. No game has done that in the series, and I feel like that could be a really cool concept. I don't mind the system for Mirage, and it works well enough. Now, on the other side of the investigation, we gotta find Ahmed. The whole mission with finding Ahmed eventually leads us to assassinating a doctor he was working with as they were part of the Order. We learned that Ahmed was helping this doctor with some sort of mechanism that supposedly lets you see into the ancient world, but Ahmed had no clue he was part of the Order. We go back to the beat to tell him what we found, and we embark on the big assassination for this investigation, and his name is Fazil. There really isn't anything too crazy with this mission. It's pretty basic, and the brunt of it is just you going around asking some questions and stealing a key. There isn't too much stealth to be had here, which is kind of annoying as I enjoy having to use stealth in these missions. We ran into Nehal again during this mission. They talked for a little bit about the strange devices and drawings in Ahmed's offices, and after that we eventually find out Fazil is in an underground location and we go into it. From here we put on some disguise to look like one of his patients and participate in the ritual. Fazil starts chatting about the device and power and knowledge. Once he gets close enough, we assassinate him. As we assassinate him, though, Basim decides to become Batman for a second. Justice! We go into the White Room confession, and Basim sees the Jinni again. This whole investigation in the Abbasiyah Bureau was okay again. It was nothing great, but it wasn't bad. The final assassination could have been better if actual stealth was needed throughout. I just enjoy them more when there's stealth involved, and there really wasn't any here. But again, I extremely appreciate the assassin feel of it. I felt like an assassin learning more about my targets and eventually taking them out, which is what I was wanting in this game, and it consistently delivers in that. Once we get back to the Bureau after the assassination, we run into Nehal again. This right here might be the worst facial animation in the game. The conversation they were having was actually a good one, talking about Basim's past and if he was going to leave Nehal there in the past. It was decent, but all that immersion was thrown out the window as they paused on both characters' faces for some reason for a few seconds. I honestly just started laughing when it happened. There was actually no emotion on either of their faces in the slightest, and it was just so funny. After we finish up with the Abbasiyah Bureau, we head to our next bureau in Karkh. Once we get there, we are greeted by Rebecca and Roshan. Here we learn about a grand auction happening called the Darit al-Mal. We believe that our target is going to be there, but we have to find a way in. Again, we are given our two different investigations for this bureau, and we go through them. One side of the investigation, Basim meets up with his old friend named Kong, and he tells us he will give us a way into the auction if we help him find his wares. We do so by finding who was responsible and assassinating him. The guy's name was the harbor master, and he was doing this so he could find a hairpin. After assassinating him, we move into the next side of this investigation. We find this perfume merchant who has been waiting for some goods, but they've never arrived. So, we go out and look for the merchants who are supposed to bring them, and we find those merchants in the wilderness. Once we get them back to Baghdad, we learn that the one behind this is called the tax collector, or also known as Alanka. So, we head on out and assassinate him and learn of the main target for this mission. We go back to the bureau to debrief with Rebecca and Roshan. After that, we embark on the mission to assassinate the target. We are still unsure of the treasure's identity, so we spend the beginning of the mission trying to figure that out. We talk to this lady named Kabiha, who will most definitely play a bigger role later in this game, and we learn that the treasure is a female named Ning. We also help Kong with something that plays no role in this mission. After doing those things, we attend the auction and bid for the hairpin. We end up losing and have to steal the hairpin from the merchant who won. Once we steal it, we need to get an audience with Ning. After obtaining the brooch we needed to get an audience with her, we eventually get the room to ourselves, and after some more talking, we assassinate her. Then we go into the confession with Ning, and she says some interesting things about being lonely, which I think is, again, some foreshadowing into the end of this game, which we will get into later. After the assassination, we escape and go to the bureau to tell Roshan and Rebecca what happened. So that concludes this bureau, and we move on to the last one. Similar to the first one, this is okay, and I hold very similar issues with both of them. There's a consistent theme not just with the first two bureaus, but the last one as well. This is the lack of plot and character development. Throughout this section, there really isn't anything too important to know. We could skip over this whole section and be like, yeah, he assassinated some people, and it would hold the same value. This really messes up the pacing as we don't see much character development with Basim besides the beginning and end of this game. This causes to a degree a rushed ending or such a sudden jump from the bureaus into the last mission. Throughout doing the bureaus, I never felt as if we were building up to anything. I just felt like I was going around assassinating people and not actually getting closer to our main target. Then all of a sudden we're on the final mission. I wish they kept a structured format and focused more on the narrative and characters in this middle section of the game, because this takes up a big part of the story and nothing really happens in it. I love the beginning and end of this game, and I just wish they kept that level of storytelling throughout the game. There's genuinely no plot besides go and assassinate. It really is a return to roots, but in this case a bad way, as this is extremely reminiscent of Assassin's Creed 1, where all you do is go and assassinate people over and over again. Assassin's Creed Mirage is nowhere close to that level of repetitiveness, but it still feels a little repetitive. I think the story's pacing is just everything narratively would have been improved if they focused on it more in the middle of this game. I would have loved to see maybe some missions with other members of the Creed, or at least dialogue that isn't purely about the target and them telling Basim what to do. They try in some places show a little bit of connection between characters, as with Rebecca and Basim having banter here and there, but again, it's just so shallow and there really isn't anything there. Even someone like Roshan, who I like in this game, I wish there was more of. The lack of supporting characters in this game is evident, and the game would have been immensely better if they improved on that. But, to try and bring my points together, the middle section of this game is so bland and brings nothing narratively besides carrying the story along until the ending. So, back in the story, we go back to Fulad at the last bureau. After speaking, we go with Ali to learn more about Jarjaraya and learn more about the captured rebels. Eventually, we learn of where the captured rebels are, and with Ali, we free them. After that, we are ready for our assault on the villa to assassinate Dogan, who is behind all this. This part was funny for me because I didn't even realize I killed Dogan until it popped up. We just went running in, just killing all of them, and I guess Dogan was one of them. We find a note on him about two people he was taking orders from. Their names were Aleshma and Alruk, and we have to find out who they are as usual. One thing I noticed doing quests with Ali is that there's a lot more use of combat and less stealth, which is something I don't mind here. Ali doesn't agree with basically anything of the Creed, and is a very head-on person, and doesn't do things stealthily at all. I don't mind the change of having him and his rebels attack and cause this big fight, and sometimes being a part of it. I definitely prefer stealth, but I don't mind the more combat-focused sections occasionally here, as there's basically none in this game. So, we head back to the bureau to discuss things, and after talking, we head out to assassinate the two targets. We go and assassinate Alishma by lighting his boat on fire to lure him out, then we kill him. Then we assassinate Alruk by infiltrating the place where he was hiding. Again, there really isn't too much to talk about regarding their assassinations. They're fairly simple, but I enjoyed doing them. After assassinating them, we learned that Alruk was meant to meet with Al-Madikwar at the Great Garrison. So, we bring this news back to Fulad and Ali. We learn of Al-Madikwar's identity, and he is a general named Wasif. So us and Ali head off to assassinate Wasif and free Beshi as he has been kidnapped by them. When we get to the garrison, we see Wasif speaking with Muhammad, who is the governor of Baghdad, and we'll learn more about him later. So, we infiltrate the Great Garrison and stealth our way around until we find Beshi, but it's too late as we watch Wasif kill him. I don't know if they were trying to make this a sad moment, but if they were, it really didn't hit that way. We knew Beshi, but he wasn't a prevalent enough character for the player to have any attachment towards him. So after Wasif kills him, he walks away and we kill the guards in the area along with Ali, and we proceed to free all the prisoners. Once we free the prisoners, Ali and them fight off the guards as we go to assassinate Wasif. We do so and have our confession along with another moment seeing the Jinni. Afterwards, Ali makes it seem like he killed Wasif so the Hidden Ones can stay safe, along with Alamut. It's a small detail, but I like it as it just deepens the idea of no one really knowing about the Hidden Ones, and we perform these assassinations but frame it as someone else. It's a small thing, but I like it. We proceed by escaping the garrison and killing the rest of the guards. Then we meet up with Ali and Fulad at the bureau just to conclude this mission. I enjoyed this whole bureau as I feel like there was more involvement with other characters, which was good, but it still falls into the same issue as the other ones, as this really doesn't add anything to the plot or advance in any way. One other thing I would have liked was maybe more of a conflict between Basim and Ali. They have two conflicting ideas of how to do things, but they just always seem to make it work. It would have been cool to see some conflict between them to the point where it messes up the mission. I feel like that was something lacking with all the bureaus. There weren't enough moments where we got setbacks or the mission didn't go our way. The only place that happens is the beginning and the end of this game, where the mission finishes differently than what was planned. Every other assassination goes perfectly with no faults, which makes it kind of boring. I would have liked to see some more conflict and things not go so smoothly. After talking with Ali and Fulad, we get a small time jump where we wake up from another bad dream and we talk to Nehala for a moment. She really pushes Basim to get answers on why he was able to activate the device from the beginning of the game and what it means, and why the Hidden Ones want it, along with a bunch of other things. This sets up the conflict for the rest of this game. Basim now is questioning a lot more things, and we will see that in the rest of this game. It just annoys me that they waited the entire game to push this plot along. Like I said before, nothing really happens in this game besides the beginning and the end, which is annoying, but I don't want to beat a dead horse, so we'll leave it at that. Basim puts those thoughts to the side for now and heads for the Harbia Bureau for the last mission. Once we get to the Bureau, we talk to Roshan and Fulad over what to do next. They tell us to investigate 3 people, Arib, Kabiha, and Muhammad, all in the round city, and to see which one of them works for the Order of the Ancients. I like this concept of investigating multiple people and figuring out who is the one associated with the Order. Obviously, it's not like a true investigation where you make the decision, which is what I spoke about earlier on the video, but it's still cool having multiple targets and having to find out who is with the Order. I start off with investigating Kabiha. We go through the whole investigation, and after unintentionally helping this woman named Makira kill someone while framing another, we conclude that Kabiha could be a part of the Order. The next person we investigate is Arib, and we go through the whole investigation and find no trail or evidence of the Order being involved. So we move on to Muhammad and investigate him. We start off by talking to this judge that tells us about the messenger that delivers messages to Muhammad. So we trail him to find where Muhammad is. We eventually break into this office and we talk with Muhammad and discover that he sold Alamut out to keep Baghdad safe. Once the conversation finishes, we escape from the Shirta. So after all that, we head to Roshan to discuss our next move. We find out and conclude that Kabiha is the head of the Order and she has to be killed. At first, though, Roshan said that she was going to do it, but Basim convinces her otherwise. So we infiltrate the palace she is staying in to find her. This final assassination was decent. There wasn't too much to it in terms of difficulty, but I still enjoyed it. You can use Ali's guards in this mission to attack the guards, and I did that. I kinda wish I didn't though, because I believe it made the mission too easy, even though I think it would still have been pretty easy, still without having them. In one of the later parts of the mission also, right before you find Kabiha, you have to do a puzzle which was fun to do. I think there was an extreme lack of those in this game, and it was fun doing one in the final mission, even though it was pretty simple. Once we solve the puzzle and enter the secret chamber where Kabiha is staying, is where everything goes crazy. You confront Kabiha, but she starts speaking to Basim about how he is more than a man, and that the Hidden Ones have been hiding from him his true nature, saying that she can help him discover who he truly is, and why he was the one who could awaken the ancient artifacts. Basim believes her and lets his guard down, but in the same moment, Roshan kills Kabiha. Basim and Roshan have this whole argument over the fact that Basim is more than a hidden one and has this unknown nature to him. I absolutely love this whole dialogue and this conversation. The stakes start to build up here, and the conflict reaches an all-time high at this point in the game. I wasn't expecting such a great setup for the ending, honestly. Out of nowhere, I really got into the story again and was excited to see what was left. I do believe it's poorly paced, but that doesn't stop the ending from being really good. It's just rushed to me. So after that conversation, we escaped the palace and went back to Nihal and explained everything to her, and the two of us set out on our journey to Alamut to find our answers. When we get there, we find that Alamut is overrun with the Order, but we get knocked out. Once we wake up, we are next to Nur in the cave. He explains everything to us and says that we were alone when he found us. Nur is in critical condition, so he can't continue, so Basim sets off on his own. We head into Alamut, which is a shadow of its former self. The whole place is burning as we make our way through, taking out enemies trying to free Rayhan and other hidden ones. The place is destroyed and there aren't many hidden ones left, it seems. Once we free Rayhan, we also confront him of the truth we learned. He is hesitant and reluctant at first to let us seek the answers, but eventually lets us. So, we head to the temple to search for this entrance. We take out all the guards and eventually discover the entrance, but Roshan arrives. This triggers the final fight in this game and the only boss fight. For the combat not being that great or a vocal point, the boss fight does what it needs to. It's nothing crazy or unbelievable, but it does what it needs to. So the fight commences. Basim versus Roshan. Two very different ideologies of the creed and how it should work. Where Roshan is ready to die to protect this temple from the Order. I like Roshan as this villain sort of, even though I don't consider her a villain at all. I could see many people agreeing with Roshan and saying she's in the right over this whole situation. I honestly might agree with her and think Basim was pushed to do what he was doing, but we'll discuss that soon. I've enjoyed the dynamic between Roshan and Basim throughout this game. It's a master versus a student. Very similar to Assassin's Creed 1, but under different circumstances. The fight takes place and Basim wins using a move he tried at the beginning of the game when they trained, which I thought was a cool touch. Once Basim takes her out, he starts walking towards the door with Nehal, who appears out of nowhere. Roshan says one last thing that stood out to me. She told Basim that he did not have to look at his past for these answers, and that the past does not define him, that he can create his own story. This reminded me of Valhalla, where Eivor finally rejects Odin and rejects their past. Basim and Eivor faced the same battle but picked two very different outcomes. Basim embraced as Eivor rejected. Once Basim and Nehal enter the Isu temple, we finally get the big plot twist of this game, with the reveal that Nehal was not a real person and purely in Basim's imagination. It couldn't be more similar to Black Ops with how Reznov was never there. Of course, nothing can beat that Reznov reveal, but this one was still so unexpected. I did not see it coming in the slightest. Nehal was never there. She was a figment of Basim's imagination. She was Loki, or the side of Loki that was in Basim. We get flashbacks of the whole game with every Nehal moment and how she was never there. And suddenly, everything starts to click. Like no one else ever reacts or says anything to her. How she just randomly pops up out of nowhere and disappears. It's because she was never there. Some moments that were really interesting to me were the parts at the beginning of the game, where Basim blames Nehal for killing the Halif, but he did it this entire time. Also how he blames her and says he never wants to see her again, and he doesn't, until he opened his mind back up to the idea of her. He reopened Nehal, or Loki, we can start calling her. Nehal was never real. She lived in Basim's mind, eating away at him. That's why Nehal constantly conflicted with the Hidden Ones and wanted Basim to find answers. It's because Nehal wanted to enter Basim's body and she wanted to become one. And also that's why she constantly brought up Basim's past and didn't want him to leave it there. She did not want Basim to reject her. She shows Basim the image that the Isu artifact portrays, and we can make the connection now that it's Loki being beaten and abused by who I assume is Odin. But also in this, Odin is portrayed by the Jinni that keeps attacking Basim's thoughts. The memories of abuse and torture that Loki endured from Odin haunted him. Basim now must face the Jinni and face his past and leave it as such, a part of his past. Once he does this, there's one last conversation with him and Nehal. A conversation that leads to them becoming one. This moment is really sad for me, actually. Basim always felt alone. Even in the fight with Roshan, she mentions how he was alone when she brought him in. Because let's truly think about it for a second. The person that Basim said was his lifelong friend was Nehal, who wasn't even real. Basim has always been alone, and even in his final moments, he wonders if he will be alone. It's really sad as once they combine, Basim slowly but surely will cease to exist. Loki takes over that body, and Basim will become so minute that he's non existent. It's a very sad ending to Basim's story because it ends here. Yeah, Basim is in Valhalla, but that's not Basim anymore. That's Loki. I do believe it's kind of both Basim and Loki at the end of this game, but so clearly it's already Loki being more in control to me. Basim was lonely, and Loki used it against him to take control. Let's take a look at Valhalla for one moment, and let's think about the moment where Eivor rejects Odin. He has a whole community behind him. He was not alone in the slightest. I think that was a key reason to why he didn't give in. He had people helping him. Basim didn't, and the only help he had was the very one trying to trick him into giving in. Isn't that ironic? Loki the trickster tricking Basim into giving in. If Basim had help, maybe his story would have ended differently. So, the game ends with Basim walking out of the temple and the hidden ones surrounding him. Roshan leaves the creed as it now goes against what she believes in, and we can already tell Loki's effects just by the way he says mentor at the end. This is no longer the Basim we knew, and even Enkidu knows that as he strikes Basim instead of landing on his arm, since he knows that's no longer the Basim he knew, but someone else. And that is where this game ends, with a final monologue with Basim speaking about finding the ones that abused him in his past and reuniting with them, which leads into Valhalla. Assassin's Creed Mirage was an enjoyable experience. This game gave me exactly what I wanted and was expecting. It was a return to roots in every way. Playing as an assassin again was so much fun, and exploring the world of Baghdad was great. Having stealth actually be a viable option again was also very nice. You feel like an assassin again, which is what I wanted. I wanted a game and story about assassins, and that's what this game was. This game is not perfect by any means, and definitely has its fair share of flaws, but I do believe it is a step in the right direction. I really do hope that this game is well received enough for Ubisoft to commit the budget and team to make a genuine Assassin's Creed game again. We haven't gotten a main Assassin's Creed game truly since Syndicate. Mirage is on a smaller budget, and it did great, so I could only imagine what they could do with a bigger budget and more time. But they gotta make sure the team making it actually knows what they're doing. Assassin's Creed Mirage is a good entry into the series, and it's a trip down memory lane for many OG fans, which is what they advertised. You get hit with so much nostalgia throughout playing, and I believe most fans of the older games would thoroughly enjoy this one. So to conclude my review, I give Assassin's Creed Mirage a 7.5 out of 10. This game does what it needs to. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it is a return to roots in its truest form. I want to thank the team from Ubisoft Bordeaux for making it a great experience for the fans of the older games. There was genuine passion behind this, and you can tell. This game has its flaws, but it succeeds in giving you that old school Assassin's Creed feel, and I had a great time playing it.